Hi, Jürg.
Hi, Andrea.
It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Recently, we've been talking a lot about US tax regulations, specifically about IRS 871M. And I wonder, why is IRS 871M still such a challenge 7 years after enforcement?
Yeah, it's because the IRS has defined like an anti-dividend abuse regulation with 871M that had to do with like equity swaps. But in doing so, they actually defined so-called equity-linked instruments being in scope. And equity-linked instruments are basically any derivative instrument that have like a US equity as an underlying. And as you know, US equities are the most popular instruments in the market, and derivatives trading is just soaring with this. So despite the regulation actually trying to prevent abuse, the number of transactions is just increasing, and forever increasing.
I see. So this regulation impacts derivatives trading, right?
Absolutely. I think, anybody investing into an option with a US tech stock underlying, for example, everybody investing into a structured product like a tracker on Amazon or Nvidia is really impacted by this regulation.
Okay, and how is it that SIX makes a difference with its IRS 871M offering then?
Well, we've built up actually logic to identify transactions that are in scope of 871M, because you need to know more than just the fact that the option has got a US equity as an underlying. So you need to know for an option what's the so-called daily delta to determine whether a transaction is really in scope. If it's a structured product, you need to know from the issuer the particularities about this instrument, whether it's in scope, how the withholding is done. And this is something where we at SIX were really coming in, because we have these relationships with the issuers and of course with the exchanges that allows us to really bring together all this data.
Very interesting. I believe you've touched on Delta One transactions, did you? Could you be a little more specific about that?
Yeah.
How can Delta One transactions be screened?
It actually has been the biggest challenge in the market is just how do I determine what a Delta One product is? And so for the so-called securitized derivatives, the issuers have just decided, I say when it's a Delta One transaction, but then this information needs to be distributed. For options and futures to a certain extent, you have to calculate the delta criteria every day with most recent trading data. So that means you really actually never fully know whether an option transaction is in scope of 871M or not, because that daily delta can change every day. Moreover, you need to know, and this is another tricky part about 871M, at what point does the underlying stock actually pay dividend? Because only with this underlying dividend payment, the actually eligibility for 871M is being triggered. So you need to know a lot of data, you need clear indication of eligibility, and you also need the corporate actions data to really know when does this underlying stock pay dividend.
Okay, that sounds quite fancy. So you've been working in this environment for quite a while now. So what is your main observation in regards of IRS 871M, like the regulation?
I would say it's just an incredible big, steep learning curve of the industry. When I remember in the beginning, people would just type in what is 871M into the Google command line, and they would get back normally the height of a mountain in their respective region, right? And if you do that now using ChatGPT, you get like all the information that actually helps you to prepare for 871M. In the beginning, there was none of this was there, so we kind of had to like go with assumptions and start like building your workflows on this. So it's been a steep learning curve for the entire industry, but now I'd say, it's firmly embedded in the entire derivatives transaction that you need to pay attention for these possible high delta transactions.
That's great to hear. So thank you very much. I really appreciated this quick conversation. You highlighting that SIX really makes a difference with data. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here.